Good morning, Doc. How are you doing?
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Great. Welcome to Ghana.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be in Ghana?
Well, it always feels good to be on the continent, so and all the more in Ghana.
Right. What do you do? I mean, just a bit of background so people get to appreciate you and your standpoint where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I work primarily in the field of public policy.
Right.
I also work across many policy areas, economic, justice, education, environmental, climate. I also work in the space of advocacy. So, and as an organizer, first and foremost, organizing communities on many of those issues. Have done that work locally in the United States, in Chicago, but also do that work internationally. And so really trying to bring the global Black diaspora and Africa together to really develop collective strategies on these issues.
You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose Ghana. So tell me why you're in Ghana.
Yeah, so we're in Ghana because it is a key location for so much of the momentum around a number of things. So one is really bringing people of African descent from around the world this notion of returning home, returning back to the continent.
Right.
And Ghana has really taken a leadership role in facilitating these kinds of pilgrimages back to Ghana, where people of African descent can come back to reconnect, if you will, and to build bridges between the continent and the diaspora. And so it made sense for us to do that here. Also, one of the organizations that is playing a leading part in facilitating and organizing this conference, the Africa Transitional Justice Legacy Fund, is based here in Accra.
Okay.
And so we wanted to really take advantage of that sort of headquarters, if you will, and bring people together.
I know that the Reparations and Racial Summit is underway, 4-day event. Guide us through, what this entire thing is about, first of all, and then we'll get into the blow-by-blow account of what each day will carry through.
Absolutely. So we are at a unique moment historically where there is increasing visibility on the need for reparations, not just at a local or a national level, but globally. We recognize that the legacies, the transatlantic slave trade and its legacies, colonialism, and present-day disparities and the circumstances in which people of African descent find themselves around the world requires us to develop collective strategies that look at the systems that have caused harm, that there were crimes against humanity that were committed, there is a need for repair and remedy, and there is also a need for healing, and we cannot do that work in a vacuum. So reparations is about what kinds of systems, how do we first look at the current systems that were formed on the backs of Black people, exploiting Black people in the slave trades, then in colonialism and in neocolonialism. What do systems that actually honor and respect our human rights, our dignity look like, and what does it take for us to build those systems? And that is the basis of when we talk about reparations. That's what we're talking about and why we wanted to come together.
4 days, what will we be doing? Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4?
So on day 1, we had opening remarks by a number of partners from around the world who are joining us in this work, from the Caribbean, from the US, from Europe, and of course from different countries in Africa. We also had the presidents of Ghana who gave the keynote address and affirmed the importance of this work in this moment. And so he was really the highlight, really talking about the importance of moving this reparations agenda and for the African continent to really be active in moving this agenda forward. Then we had pilgrimages. So the attendees have gone to, as of yesterday, they went to Cape Coast. So they are going to the sites, and this is really about the healing process, going to the different sites and going through that process, seeing Cape Coast and just having that experience. So that was the entire day from 6 a.m. through all through
crisscrossing
till night.
the nation.
Absolutely. So today we have a number of sessions, again, talking about the global systems and structures that are perpetuating continued exploitation. Also the responsibilities of leadership, not just when we look at the West, but leadership in Africa, as in what role do we need to play in moving this forward. And then tomorrow we have a declaration that will be developed because we have clear outcomes from this. It's not just for us to come together and talk. It's actually about developing a collective strategy and leaving here with marching orders, if you will. And so that will be primarily what we'll do tomorrow.
Let's talk about theme and venue. Where's all this big conversation happening?
So we are, the conversations are happening at Kempinski Hotel, and then the pilgrimages are in Ada tomorrow, and then yesterday it was in Cape Coast and a few other locations.
Ada has Asafutufiami, right? So it will coincide there. What's the theme? the overarching theme for this program?
The overarching theme is advancing justice, the need for reparations, and racial healing. And so we know that reparations is about justice. It is about acknowledging the harms, the crimes against humanity that were committed against Black people. Also, acknowledging not just the role of the West, but the role of Africans in that tragedy, right? Because this is about accountability.
Right.
It is about then building the bridges and relationships so that we can heal across between the continent and the diaspora, and even within the continent itself, so that we can then develop collective strategies to address international monetary policy, financial institutions, the role of all of these systems and structures that are perpetuating continued exploitation and executing that agenda. So we want this theme of advancing justice to really guide our work, because at the end of the day, people can say, well, the transatlantic slave trade happened in the past, but we're experiencing the legacies continuing today, and justice is about remedy and repairing that harm.
I find this very interesting, first of all, thought-provoking as well. If I have somebody out there watching us now who thinks that, well, I should be here, is it open to the public? If not, how can they participate?
Yes, so many of the organizations that were invited, because of COVID, we had to limit the number of people and had to put protocols in place.
Right.
So we weren't able to have it as open as we would want. However, we do have a public listing of all of the organizations and the individuals that are participating. And our responsibility is to share this information publicly so that anyone around the world who wants to can get involved.
Partnership. Who are your partners on this right?
Yeah, so this convening was, the MacArthur Foundation actually played a very large role in the inception of the idea and supporting the idea. Again, I mentioned the ATJLF that's based here in Accra. We have the Africa America Institute that's also involved, myself with Global Black. We also have a coalition, the Global Circle for Reparations and Healing, that includes groups like NARC and NCOBRA that are based in the U.S. We have representation from the Caribbean with Dr. Sir Hilary Beckles from CARICOM. So the Caribbean contingent is represented. We also have people joining us from Central and South America who are also involved. So again, the emphasis is this is a global convening that we felt was appropriate to have in Ghana, but the implications are really to be worldwide.
The President of the Republic of Ghana spoke about it at the opening, as you mentioned. It gives me an indication that perhaps we are all involved. What role can African nations, first of all, play on one part? And then you have non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations. What role can they play, especially those on the continent, to make sure that this becomes a reality?
Yes, so one thing to keep in mind and to understand is that at the grassroots level, which is critical with civil society, this conversation is not going anywhere. People have been working on reparations for decades, and it has reached a point where it cannot be ignored any longer. And so for anyone in leadership, it is to pay attention to what's happening at the grassroots level, because this is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So we're engaging the grassroots civil society organizations. For African leadership, it is important to note that this is a part of when we talk about being self-determining and self-determination, it is about being able to acknowledge the role of the institutions that have created these circumstances of underdevelopment, if you will, where we don't have the sort of independence to make decisions economically, to make decisions about how we will engage, whether bilaterally or multilaterally. So for African leadership, it's important to actually pay attention, because what the people are saying is, we want leadership that is responsive. We want leadership that's not simply kowtowing to partners in the West, or that is just kind of following the lead of the West. We want leadership that can acknowledge what we have, that we have what we need to be self-determining, and that repairing the harms from the transatlantic slave trade through colonialism, through neocolonialism, is part of our work moving forward, and leadership has to respond to that. For the African continent to have to the extent that we can develop a common position where heads of state can be on one accord about how this work moves forward, that sends a real message that this is a serious endeavor. The people are already moving in that direction, and so we want leadership to really pay attention to the direction that people are moving.
At the heart of all this conversation about reparation, healing process, racial discrimination, you'll find that there are conversations about abuses. How are groups like yours and those scattered around the diaspora offering a certain support system to people who may be traumatized within this space?
Well, so part of why this convening, we talk a lot about healing, is because there is a need for deep healing. There's a need for internal, intra-community healing and inter-community healing.
Right.
And by intra-community healing, it is looking at the metrics of how people of African descent are faring, whether in Colombia or Nigeria or in the US. We can pick out examples, whether it's police violence and police killings by the state in the US or in Brazil, or whether it is the health disparities, the life expectancy gap that you'll witness in other places. These are ongoing traumas that our communities have to heal from, and that's why we emphasize healing.
Right.
But inter-community healing is also necessary because we have to acknowledge what was the role of Africans in the transatlantic slave trade, right? We can't run away from that conversation. Also, what is the role of leadership in making sure that our people have a high quality of life, that they can live with their rights and their dignity? We can't shy away from those difficult conversations either. So when we talk about accountability and healing, it is about saying we have to put everything on the table and talk truthfully,
Right.
so that we can now begin to build authentic relationships that allow us to now see what is our vision. How do we repair? What kinds of systems can we build that reflect the values that we have, those values of justice?
Let's assume and picture for a second where in the future we've been able to achieve all these things that you have spoken about. What will be the benefit to the continent and to people of African descent and Africans particularly?
The benefit will be tremendous because Africa already is the future. When we look at, even if we just look at demographically, the youth on this continent, where the energy is, the innovation, the space to be creative, the space to tackle the world's challenges in African cities, that's where the opportunity is. On the issues of climate, that's where the opportunity is. So Africa is already the future. And so the work of reconnecting Africa with the diaspora to acknowledge that we all have this home, if you will, is a part of the work that we have to do because the tragedy of the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, neocolonialism, was this notion that we have to go outside to get what we need, that we have to be validated either by the West or by traveling out. When what we're saying is we have to trust in our value systems. We have to trust in our genius, in our expertise to build systems that don't just mimic the harmful systems that we have. So we shouldn't just be recreating the same institutions, but we can actually envision, based on our value systems and our culture, we can envision systems that actually work in our favor. And what that looks like is in Africa, all of the countries in Africa that are self-determining, that are not simply on the agenda, someone else's agenda, but are developing their own agenda, on a diaspora that can come home freely, right? That can see this as a place to aspire to be, or at least to visit. And where we don't have a situation where our people have to go out to get an education, to get health care, or to get any of the things that we see people traveling out to do. Precisely.
Is reparation about money? That's a big conversation on the streets. Each time you mention it, say, oh, we're looking for a white man to bring us some money beyond the healing and to stop racial discrimination. There has to be money. Is it about money?
It's about so much more than money. Money is important. So I don't want
So
people
we
to
are looking
mistake
forward
it.
to some money.
But it's about so much more than money. One of the requirements when we look at the United Nations definition of reparations is a guarantee on non-repetition, meaning that these circumstances of exploitation should not be able to happen again.
Right.
You can't, if it's just money, the same systems are in place, in a year's time, 2 years' time, 10 years' time, we'll be right where we started. This is why we emphasize that it is changing the systems, the monetary policy, even tax policy, the health systems, the education systems, because those systems are what perpetuate the harm. You get neocolonialism by keeping the same systems in place from colonialism.
Right.
And that's why we're not as self-determining as we should be. So the compensation component, that's just one component of reparations. And it's important because in a study a couple of years ago, $152 trillion moving from the global south, what's called the global south, to the global north in terms of extraction of resources, financial extraction, right? So there are tangible financial implications of reparations that we can't ignore. And there's precedent for reparations monetary throughout history. The Japanese internment in the United States, they were paid reparations. In fact, Haiti paid France reparations monetarily for when they became independent, to the tune of billions of dollars paying to France. The UK paid slaveholders reparations financially when they ended slavery. So there is a precedent for financial reparations that has been paid to people that were perpetrators of the crime. And so we cannot say now that we are now saying, oh, reparations, that, oh, well, there's no money involved. No, there's money involved.
There's money involved
but
somewhere.
it's more than just the money. It's the systems and the structures.
Closing thoughts. That's your camera right there. What do you say in 30 seconds?
So we are welcoming everyone from around the world. This is a global endeavor. We want people of African descent to be involved, to be engaged, to speak up and to be bold about this moment that we're in, which is historic. And so beyond the summit, this is ongoing work. It started long before myself and others were involved, and it will continue long afterwards. So we're just inviting people to join us in this collective struggle and to work toward the vision that we have.
Doc, thank you very much. I've been speaking to Dr. Enya. She is here on the ticket of the Reparations and Racial Healing Summit, presently happening at the Kempinski Gold Coast Hotel. There's some more action there today. I'm told there's an Adar trip. Yesterday was Cape Coast. So we'll keep you posted. We'll see you after the break.